Right, hello there everybody, Adam Clery here. Where is it? 2 seconds. ACFC, that's still absolutely mind-bending to me. And Tottenham Hotspur. That's all quite bad at the minute. The performances on the pitch, they are bad. The position in the league table is bad. The relationship between the manager and the fans, that is very bad. And that's pretty much all the introduction you need. So this is why Tottenham are bad right now. Alright, so just to start, super basic before we start getting into the team and the formation and what's not working on the pitch. A cursory look at the league table should have alarm bells ringing. And in fact, if we get slightly more specific with the league table, this was a little hunch I had before, if you go back to where they beat Manchester City 4-0, the last time I can remember them looking really good, the league table since then is horrible. Like, it is quite literally just the fact there is a freakishly bad crop of promoted sides this season that is keeping them out of relegation form. Now, we're getting an extra Champions League place this season, so if the Championship, we're getting an extra Premier League place, I think Tottenham would be sweating in spinal fluid over the form of Wolves right now. But what is absolutely mad, right, to me, a complete nerd, admittedly, is that from a purely statistical sense, bear with me, Ange Ball, as we've all stopped calling it, does look like it's working brilliantly. Now, yes, it doesn't look like that with your eyes, which is obviously quite important. But if you look at the numbers this season, it starts making it very difficult to put your finger on exactly what's wrong. So just really quick refresher for you on their play style, right? Tottenham, under penalty of death, mate, play out from the back. As they progress further up the pitch, they get this nice attacking line of 5. The two fullbacks both invert into the middle of the pitch, usually at the same time, and they end up in this sort of 2-3-5 situation. And one of the main things that's supposed to encourage in the final third, right, is that the fullbacks have the freedom to push up even further, and you get these nice little rotations and combination play between one of the 8s, who was playing as a 10, the wide forward, and the fullback. Now, I'll just safely assume you understand what the word rotation means, but just to give you an example, you can end up with Son, Maddison, and Udogie here, but it allows Son to drive a goal while the fullback takes the width and Maddison drops a little deeper to get on the ball. That's one way it can work. Or again, you've seen this a bunch of times, as Son sits a little deeper, that allows Maddison to drag a defender out of the centre, and then the fullbacks make these underlapping runs into the number 10 position. It's supposed to be incredibly difficult for other teams to pick up the right player in the right situation. But also, the other side of this is because the two fullbacks are expected to push up and join in with the forward play, it gives you a really, really aggressive high press. Like, Tottenham always have the numbers to squeeze the opposition in their own third. Now, yes, that is like a massive oversimplification, and they've had to make loads of small little adjustments to it as the injuries have piled up. But the reason I said before that if you look at their numbers, you wouldn't think they were this bad, is because this is exactly what they're trying to do, and you can see that working in the numbers. Like, they've got the second highest number of goals this season from fast breaks, meaning taking it off an opponent, bursting up the other end of the field and putting it in the net. They're second in the league for the number of progressive carries, which just means literally running with the ball at least 10 yards towards the goal. Tackles won in the middle third of the pitch, they're 4th, that's really good. Tackles won in the opposition's third of the pitch, they're 4th again, that's really good. And despite like how bad the form has been, they're still 5th in the league, only recently down from 3rd for the total number of goals scored. Like, if you're in any way arsed about XG, which I know a lot of people aren't, but if you are, they've got a higher XG this season than Arsenal and Newcastle. So clearly, what they're doing looks like it's working. Like, I cannot stress this enough. If you did not look at the league table or watch them with your actual eyes, you would assume that they were an amazing team to watch who are flying in the league. So, what the f***? Ange has obviously said repeatedly this season that the only real problem they've got is the number of injuries they get. And I think he's right to an extent. Like, what he's trying to say is that it's not really fair to judge them when they're constantly without all of their best players. But for me, it's more that this sort of like dynamic, rotational attacking football lives and dies by the sort of synergy, the coordination, and the understanding you have between the players involved. And you simply can't get that if you're being forced to change the 11 every single week. If someone comes in, plays well, gets 5 games in, then gets injured again, and you've got to swap them out, it's like starting all over again. And as a result, for all the numbers that do look really encouraging and say they're actually playing quite well, there are a number of other stats which are alarming. He's got them so religiously committed to this very short, neat build-up structure that when teams stop it working, they kind of get stuck. So as a result, they're now 5th in the league for touches in their own defensive third, like wedged between Ipswich, Southampton and Leicester, while they just sort of magically wait for something to open up or one player to do something individually brilliant. And so what most teams do when they play Spurs now, just gum up that middle of the pitch without even being that aggressive with it, because they know they're never going to give in to the temptation to mix it up and go long. Like they're 3rd bottom this season for long passes and rock bottom for the number of long goal kicks. Like literally 4% of their goal kicks leave their half. But if you look at Vicario's total passing numbers this season, only like 14% of them are considered not short. So basically, the point I'm trying to make is that every team they come up against in the Premier League now knows 2 things. A, you can't just sit in a solid block and defend deep because they lack the connectivity, the dynamism, the understanding with each other to really break you down. But also, you're quite free to press them high because they will never give in to the temptation to go long for fear of an Australian man loudly berating them from the touchline. And the only way you can square what I have just said there with the fact that so many of their stats look very promising and very encouraging is that Spurs' way of playing is not bad. It's actually really good. It's just become incredibly predictable. And I'm sure you know what I mean here, right? Romero's options, they're incredibly limited, but instead of putting Bergvall in trouble here with his facing his own goal and somebody up his arse, he completely splits the entire Chelsea press and fires it into Solanke's feet. Which, if you recall what I said to me a minute ago, is not the system getting them out of that situation, it's an individual doing something really good. And now Solanke's got it, and he is great at this. He drops deep in between the opposition to hold it up and help them play forward. So what you've seen here is 2 really good individual bits of play. He holds up his marker, he plays it into Maddison, and this should be a way. Like, this is everything the Spurs system is supposed to do. Like, it invites the pressure on, it suckers the opposition in, then with brave, courageous forward play, you get through them and you're behind. Like, this right here is the whole point. They work it out wide, they start committing men forwards, and what you're seeing here is the beginnings of what these rotations are supposed to be. You got your fullback, you got your number 8, and you've got your wide forward. The defenders aren't supposed to be able to know who's going to do what. That's what makes it effective. Any of them could go to the byline, any of them could go towards goal, any of them could get in the half space. They should unpick the defence from here. But what happens next is what we have kept seeing this Tottenham side do this season, and it's the reason why this system isn't working. The link up, the understanding, everything just is not there. Like you can see, the space to get into, the thing that will cause Chelsea problems is this inside channel, and all of them apparently expect one of the other 2 to do it. Son wants to stay wide, but Adobe wants to overlap them despite there being no real space to overlap, and Maddison decides to sit deep. But instead, none of them do any of that. Son just cuts back away from goal to see what options there actually are. Chelsea get back in, and like 8 or 9 seconds later, it's back with Vicario. And if you watch the game, you see this happen time and time again. Like this is like 7 or 8 minutes later. They beat Chelsea's press again. They drive down the right this time, and Bergvall and Spence literally end up running into each other because they both want that inside channel. There's even a moment a few seconds earlier where they could possibly have just slipped Spence in, but there's just no instinct for that to happen. There's no understanding of who's going to be doing what. And in the end, of all the options that were available to them here, Bergvall winds up overrunning the literal run Spence was making. But the real problem, the real problem is that when they do commit all these players forwards and they do get some of these rotations starting to work, it's what it means for them trying to defend when they lose the ball. I've got a ball camera now. Like this high line, all of these rotations, like when Tottenham are playing well, these are huge strengths to have. But the predictability of it all means that when they're playing badly, they become so easy to hit on a counter-attack. Like the obvious example is literally in the first minute of the game, like their press is slightly off and they don't close down, so Chelsea just go over the top with pace and should very obviously score that. But the really important bit to note comes later in the first half. They're on the front foot, that's good. They're camped in Chelsea's half, that's good. Both fullbacks commit to the attack. That's good. Madison's dropped deep because they're doing the rotations. That's good. And then they give the ball away. Chelsea break, and this is the position they're in. They are way overstretched, and their third best defensive option in this situation is now James Maddison, because he's rotated with the fullback. A very player I personally really like, James Maddison, but he's not renowned for his long-busting defensive recovery runs, but he simply has to make it because he's in that position. So now every single player has to sprint back at their absolute maximum to try and recover this situation. And stuff like this happens several times every single game. Like the physical demands on their body when they get caught and they've got to all get back, regardless of whether that's supposed to be their job or not, is enormous. The human hamstring, my friend, can simply not be expected to deal with this level of panic every single time you go to work. And then you combine all this with the small stuff, and they're making bad individual decisions as well, like the goal comes from them having a 3v3 defending across into the box, but getting who's picking up who mixed up in the moment, and allowing the smallest player in that scenario to score a header. Like, fundamentally, the system with these players right now is not working, and you are relying on great moments of individual play to pull it together. So when that doesn't happen, and instead you actually get individual mistakes, you have no chance. Like, cards completely on the table here, right? I really like Ange Postecoglu. I interviewed him last year, and he was probably the smartest, nicest man I've ever sat down with. And I really like this brand of football. I love it when it works. Well, like, Spurs have got some fantastic players. Like, they should be at the top end of the league somewhere. But the reality of it all is when you've got a system that lives and dies by the cohesion and the familiarity of the players involved with it, and you can't get that cohesion and familiarity because everybody's getting injured trying to make recovery runs for the mistakes you're making because they don't have the familiarity and the cohesion, you're in a vicious cycle, and I don't see how you get out of that. So yeah, I'm not going to mess about with this. Tottenham fans, should he stay or should he go? Like, is he wholly responsible for this mess you're in, and thus the only solution is to make a managerial change? Do you think he deserves until the end of the season to see if he can keep players fit and watch what happens when they get that familiarity? Or is this the club's fault? Has he been let down at board level and he deserves next season to try and make it work? All thoughts, all feelings, or poetry, or verse, this true song of your heart, please get that in the comments about this. I do enjoy reading every single one of them. And you get me across all the social medias at Adam Clery, Clery. Nice fancy graphics and backgrounds and whatnot. They're being worked on. I've seen some early versions of them. They look absolutely incredible. But in the meantime, yeah, that's why Tottenham isn't working. And this is ACFC. And I am Adam Clery. Have a nice weekend. I've been really into going outside lately, so maybe check that out. Goodbye.